Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is the first webinar in our webinar series for 2014. So a very happy new year for 2014 for all of you listening. So this webinar today is brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by Basware, and we're looking in particular at the cooperatives story, which is a fascinating story because they've been doing a lot with their manual invoices over the last while, and what we're really zeroing in on today is how they have successfully and intelligently automated 1.75 million paper invoices. So this is very much a case study based webinar today. My name is Susie West and I am your chair for today. I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link, and I'm very pleased to be presenting as our guest speakers for today Adam Williams, who is the Head of Financial Services at the Co-operative, and Karen Airy, who's Marketing and Communications Manager at Basware. Let's have a look at the agenda for the next 60 minutes. I'm going to be opening up with a very, very brief context, and then we've got a 10-minute overview of the Basware solution, which Karen is going to be walking us through, and then we're handing over to Adam, who is looking to cover off the story as to what they've been doing at the cooperative. And then in the last 10 minutes of this webinar, we'll be looking to address your questions. And that really just takes me on to your role in all of this. Again, there's a reason why you registered and attended this, registered for and attended this webinar today. So really do make sure that you go away with those kind of reasons, those nagging questions that compelled you to register answered, so you can really make sure that this is a good investment of your time. How that works is you post that question to me, please, in the free text box that you've got highlighted here on the panel that you've got on your desktop, and just submit that to me, and I will put those questions to our speakers in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So just before we go into the context, I just wanted to quickly run the first poll question. We've got two poll questions today. The first poll question, so if I just launch that, that's going to be coming up on your screen very shortly. Now this really just tells us the size of the organisations that we've got registered and attending this webinar today. So how many manual invoices do you process each year? So these are invoices that somehow arrive in your organisation in a paper format. You might then automate them, or these are very much received manually and processed manually. So if you can just share with us that number. So how many manual invoices do you process each year? They arrive in a paper format, and you also might process them manually as well. Is it less than 100,000? Is it 100,000 to $250,000, $250,000 to $500,000, $500,000 to $1 million? Or are you receiving and processing more than 1 million manual invoices each year? We do like to get north of 70% of our attendees responding. Unfortunately, we're only at 64%. So if you haven't already ticked the button or filled in the button, clicked on the button that represents your own situation, please do so. And I'll be closing the poll shortly. And just to remind you, if this is the first time you've joined our webinars, we do, of course, share the results after each poll. So we're at 74%, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the data coming up on your screens now. So it's quite interesting, 44% less than 100,000 and 56% over 100,000. So 8% of you will empathise very much with Adam because you're processing over 1 million manual invoices as well. So a similar kind of scope there. Okay, good. So thank you for that. So with that in mind, just wanted to touch briefly before I introduce our first speaker, Karen Airy, a little bit about the context as to why we're having this discussion today and why is it pertinent, why is it important to us. So the drivers to reduce paper in our organisation and the costs associated with paper, and to drive out the process inefficiencies continues for 2014, and it continues with the kind of added pressure that there remains to be a keen focus on, first of all, service excellence, shared services organisations making sure that they are extending an excellent service to their internal customers and also their suppliers, and also making sure that they do an implementation for automating invoicing in a way that is of minimal disruption to business. So lots of pressures, making sure that the project that you look to do is a very successful one for yourselves and also for the business. So I'm really, really pleased that we're looking at how to successfully and intelligently automate 1.75 million paper invoices. So to really give some more context to this, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Karen Airy. Over to you, please, Karen.
Thank you, Susie, and hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. As Susie has said, I'm Marketing Communications Manager for Basware, and as part of my role, I also work very closely with our customers to understand the issues they're facing and how different approaches have allowed them to transform the way finance and procurement work within the business and to achieve the benefits which reach far beyond their own functions. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Basware and to provide a bit more background on today's webinar. It's true to say that despite recent indicators of improvement, these are still challenging times. Cash flow and control are very much still a focus, and as is the ability to achieve more with less. We're also seeing the ways that trading networks are evolving and becoming increasingly complex between companies, especially when we look internationally. Organisations are increasing their levels of international trade as they grow, but this raises issues around standards and visibility across the supply base. Volatility of markets still has an effect on stability, compliance, and cost. To respond to these types of changes demands flexibility. But flexibility is inhibited by the transaction chaos that exists across key processes. Manual paper handling is often the root cause plaguing financial processes. There's a wealth of causes for this transactional chaos that companies experience. Error-prone paper processes for one, but that's combined with data that's often held in silos, and there are a myriad of different processes and systems in use. All of this can contribute to limited visibility, impacting forecasting and cash. In a survey we conducted, 71% of CFOs said that their greater levels of reliance between different finance systems within their organisation present a cash flow visibility challenge. And it seems that the more systems we have, the harder it is to get a clear picture of the financial situation. So it's no wonder then that in the same survey, 62% claim that connecting disparate parts of this purchase and payment process within the business is now of critical importance. The CFOs seek to gain greater control over the cash flow, their financial supply chain and future growth. The success and failure of managing these competing factors is bound by the systems and processes in use. And in today's world, this complexity is a significant barrier to success and competitiveness, an obstacle to operational agility, and it's becoming an increasing drain on valuable resources. So whether you're a small company looking to better forecast cash and do more with the same amount of resources, or a large multinational looking to introduce cost savings, the bottom line is that paper, document handling, and siloed information creates challenges which we need to simplify. Why is this chaos such a high priority to CFOs, or rather removing this chaos? Well, it's because it really hurts. Many of us are familiar with the issues surrounding paper-based finance and procurement processes and disparate systems. These cause settlement delays, high errors, inefficiency, and maverick purchasing. But what's the knock-on effect at a strategic level? Well, it creates a lack of agility to deal with market change, which is critical at these times, and late visibility into working capital position. Uncontrolled spend removes the ability for us to put the brakes on in tough times and to stop spending. An uncompetitive cost base. All things which have a significant impact on your organisation's ability to remain competitive and agile. So we recognise there's a problem, but why is this transaction chaos so hard to solve? Well, firstly, there's people. Their targets and their goals and having misaligned people can be a significant barrier. We regularly host seminars which look at the issue of financial collaboration and transformation. And when we talk to delegates about improving collaboration and some of the barriers they're experiencing, it's often said that even though organizations and individuals have the willingness to collaborate more effectively, and that they recognize the issues and see the benefits of a more effective purchase-to-pay process, one of the biggest barriers remains this misalignment of departmental and functional goals. Everyone continues to strive for different targets. The one common area of conflict we can see in this diagram here is the balance between procurement finding headline savings and finance pushing out payment terms to improve working capital. Finding a better way to work with suppliers to optimize terms is difficult when targets are misaligned and there's a lack of visibility between functions. Aligned goals and technology can allow procurement and finance to work effectively together to agree and optimize payment terms. So looking beyond people, underpinning this chaos, we also have the systems landscape to consider. Fragmented and disconnected functional systems cause collaboration issues within organizations and hamper visibility. An approach centered around ERP can make change slow and expensive. And looking further afield at the technologies which exist between companies, there are often interoperability challenges between organizations transferring data with no single end-to-end process view. And as always, there are legal, cultural, and commercial obstacles. This transaction chaos is really having an impact on organizations achieving their strategic goals. And increasingly, the pain points we highlighted earlier, the lack of agility to deal with market change, a lack of visibility, and having an uncompetitive cost base, are increasingly becoming the real drivers of change within purchase to pay, more so than cost efficiencies and process efficiencies that we used to see just limited to the accounts payable function. So moving on, who are Basware and what do we contribute to this theme? Basware was founded in 1985 and launched invoice workflow technologies in the late 1990s. Since this time, Basware has consistently been ranked #1 or 2 by independent analysts such as Forrester and Gartner in the purchase-to-pay and supplier network space. We have over 1,400 employees covering over 30 countries and users in greater than 95 countries. Our 2012 sales were in excess of 110 million euros. Our supplier network is focused on driving significantly more value out of the P2P platforms or whatever P2P platform you're using through the addition of efficiencies and improved supplier collaboration. So what exactly do our solutions do? Well, we drive financial performance forward. And here you can see some examples of the type of organizations we work with and some of the things that have been achieved by our customers. We provide open, secure, cloud-based purchase-to-pay and e-invoicing solutions to organizations of all sizes, resulting in greater efficiencies in procurement, accounts payable, and accounts receivable. And these efficiencies bring about far wider competitive benefits in the organization. Companies from all industries, from small businesses to corporate giants, use Basware solutions to drive sustainable cost savings and insight into cash flow. So just highlighting a few of the examples here, Toshiba use Basware's e-invoicing sending services and they've reduced their invoicing costs by 75%. Ritter Sport deployed Basware's procurement solution to gain better control and visibility across their spend and reduce third-party spend by 10%. Heineken process over 90% of their invoices without any manual intervention. And along with the Co-operative group, we work with shared services across private and public sectors with customers such as Tyco, East Lancashire Financial Shared Services, and the National Offender Management Service. So looking in a little more detail about what we deliver, Basware provides solutions across the full purchase-to-pay cycle through procurement, invoice automation, and e-invoicing. From a sourcing and procurement perspective, we work to create visibility through spend reporting and metrics across PO and non-PO based spend, to improve supplier relationships through efficiency and content management through our supplier networking tools, and to ensure compliance through easy-to-use integrated tools that allow people in all roles across the organization to buy in a compliant and effective way. From an accounts payable automation perspective, we look to completely remove paper from the process and enable automated matching and exception workflow, offering greater efficiency, compliance and visibility. Our solution integrates with over 250 ERPs and is often used by organizations with multiple ERP landscapes to provide standardization and a single version of the truth. Our commerce network connects buyers and sellers to the transfer of e-invoices, e-orders, to enable companies to take advantage of e-invoicing by offering a variety of flexible services which appeal to organizations, whether they're sending and receiving high invoice volumes or smaller numbers. Our commerce network is founded on the principles of openness, where all types of organizations can collaborate and trade, making it the largest in the world. Today, we connect millions of business users in 900,000 companies across over 100 countries. So apart from the breadth of our solutions, why else do people work with us? Well, we're dedicated to purchase to pay and provide role-based user experience across the entire P2P cycle and offer anytime, anywhere access to tasks via data, mobile and tablet applications. We also maximize our time to value by offering standardized products and services packages wherever possible. Our solutions offer easy and intelligent collaboration with a rich suite of services, enabling transaction exchange for any size and type of company and format conversion, regulatory compliance for international trade. So thank you for allowing me some time to introduce Basware. If you're interested in finding out more about any of the customers I've mentioned, then you can access information by our Knowledge Centre. You'll also find white papers, how-to guides and other resources which may be useful. I'm now very pleased to introduce Adam Williams from the Co-operative Group, who will describe their approach to purchase to pay and how they successfully automated their paper invoices.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good afternoon, everybody. Over the next 30 minutes or so, I'd like to just share with you the cooperative story on how we have successfully and intelligently automated 1.75 million paper invoices. I'd like to do that in three parts. The first part is really to give some context around the cooperative and its businesses and the Financial Shared Services Centre itself. And that'll help project the flavour of the project and the outcome of the project, which is the second and third part of this presentation. A little context about the cooperative first of all. The movement was established in 1844, so we've been going quite a long time now. We do operate our businesses from the UK only, and although we sell in the UK, we acquire product from all over the world. The businesses of the cooperative have been historically in two different areas, trading group businesses and our banking group businesses. Those two came together during the course of the last 18 months, but for those who keep up to date with all the press about the cooperative, the banking business has recently separated from the cooperative. Banking group businesses involve the cooperative bank and a general insurance business, and I'll come on to this further later on in the presentation, but at this very moment in time today, the cooperative group owns 30% of the bank and 100% of our general insurance business. We have a very large £1 billion turnover, a whole host of employees across our different businesses, and the next few bullets really give some indication of the different types of businesses and the number of locations that are on the high streets within the UK, around 5,000 outlets across the UK in total. The next colourful slide actually just gives the businesses and the branding around the businesses. There is one standout one which doesn't follow the brand of all the other businesses, and that is the SSG, Sunwind Services Group. Just to quickly explain what that business is, it is a cash-in-transit business. So for those of you in the UK who are familiar with a company called G4S, this is our wholly owned company, Sunwind Services Group, that delivers and collects cash from our retail outlets, so the 5,000 mentioned on the previous slide. It's not just an internal business, There are a number of commercial contracts with other retailers from different markets. Just pausing to think about some of the other businesses. Our food business is the 5th biggest food retailer by market share, clearly behind Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda and Morrison's. We are the UK's biggest farmer, which is part of our food business. Our pharmacy retail business is the 3rd behind Boots and Lloyd's. We have a joint venture travel business with Thomas Cook, with 400 travel branches branded as the Co-operative. Funeral care is the leader in market share within the funerals business. Our estates team has not only the management of all the 5,000 outlets that we sell from and support centre buildings, but it also has a very sizable property investment portfolio as well. And finally on this page, our legal services business is a start-up operation from 2 years ago, which is very successfully jumping on the back of the government's deregulation of certain legal services. So that's a flavour of our businesses. If I turn to Finance Shared Services itself, then we were effectively born as a Finance Shared Services in 2008, and that followed the merger of what was an independent cooperative society, and the largest one at that, with the cooperative group. And a decision was taken early following that merger that a shared service centre for finance should actually be constructed. The shared service centre today still deals with bread and butter transactional processing activities as listed on that bullet there: payables, receivables, travel and expense, all cash related activity, and fixed assets. Several ledgers existed in 2008 across all our businesses, and I'll come back to that shortly. I mentioned earlier that the banking group businesses integrated from 2012, and they are now being separated because the bank is now not wholly owned by the cooperative group. It is only 30% owned, and given that that is not a majority shareholding, the bank have taken their view that they wish to separate the financial shared services activities from my team, and that's a process of separation we're going through right now. Just some facts really in our payables. There are 8 million invoices annually, goods for resale and not for resale, about £10 billion. We raise about 1 million sales invoices annually for about £1 billion. 60,000 expense claims for £7 million. We account for the income of the business, around 13 to 14 billion pounds each year. Fixed assets, one of the biggest numbers on our balance sheet, at 5 billion pounds. And there has been some significant merger since the shared services was formed. The banking business acquired Britannia Building Society, our food business acquired Summerfield Food Stores, and there's been various other mergers of smaller independent cooperative societies. The biggest decision we made, and the next slide tries to bring this to life a little, is actually changing our locations, which covered the legacy of how the processing activities were organised across many geographical locations, and actually bringing them to one location. So if we hadn't changed anything since 2008, we would actually be spread across 9 locations and 570 FTE. Just a couple of numbers on there. The 90 in Bristol, which is the second line from the bottom, is actually the Summerfield team that existed at the time we acquired it. What we've actually got right now today, and I know the slide says August 2013, but today we're in a position where we have a single location in Manchester in our support centre head office, and there are less than 240 people. So there has been great change since 2008 with acquisitions, mergers, and then consolidations, both geographically and at a business process level, to get us to where we are today, and we've got a lot more that we can do. So in terms of this project, the drivers for the project were, back in 2008, we had multiple AP systems. Literally every business had its own different AP, so that was one of the drivers. Very manual, cumbersome purchase-to-pay processes with a lot of paper, as the title of this presentation suggests. There was no PO, no pay policy, mainly driven by the fact that there was many different systems, some of which didn't even support the production of purchase orders. That in turn gave control and compliance issues, and paper-based approval workflow for goods for not for resale didn't exist. The paper base was what we did do. Invoices basically went around the UK 2 or 3 times before they were approved, and that clearly wasn't efficient. In terms of the 8 million invoices mentioned earlier, about 7 million of those are goods for resale, but 85% of them currently are electronic on EDI, but that 15% is still over 1 million invoices, and we have around 600,000 goods not for resale invoices annually with no EDI at the time this project kicked off. No data capture for goods not for resale. They were simply hand cranked and typed into our AP systems. Just on the number of suppliers, lots of active suppliers, too many, and that was another driver for change as far as this project was concerned. And whilst we had some KPIs, they were limited, there weren't very strong service level agreements in place, so we wanted to wrap that improvement in this project as well. So hopefully that provides a little context as to the shape of our business, the history of the Fine and Shared Service Centre, and the nature of the project we were embarking on. So the objective of the project in late 2011 is, as stated on your screens now, we literally wanted to significantly improve where we were in the efficiencies and the overall process and control of our purchase-to-pay spend. And some of the key themes coming out of those drivers for change were to rationalise our ledgers to, instead of having what was 12 originally, to bring that number down significantly, introduce purchase-to-pay systems, working towards no PO, no pay. We wanted to clearly get to a place where we could monitor compliance and report and drive further improvement of that. We wanted to make sure our supplier base was reduced as far as practically possible and make sure that the use of preferred suppliers allowed us to leverage our purchasing power. And we wanted to update the data capture for our goods for resale invoices in line with the new technology that we were making available for our goods not for resale. And that indeed is the next point, to introduce data capture and electronic workflow for our goods not for resale processing. And of course the final point, as mentioned previously, to formalise, agree and report against the two-way service level agreements and have some critical key performance indicators that we could measure our success on. The project itself, clearly with any major project, a business case is required and some time needs to be invested in pulling together the relevant costs and benefits of what we were wanting to deliver it and indeed what success looked like. What this also required was an executive mandate from the executive of the cooperative group, which is basically the board of directors, and that was the mandate for change that we required. This would only work if the executive were totally bought into it and supported any escalation that eventually went up to their desks. The principal requirements to deliver success were to get an e-procurement tool that allowed us to uniformly raise orders across the business, to update our data capture facility, and to introduce a new approval workflow tool for our goods and services not for resale. The biggest requirement that would make this work is the cultural change across our people There are 5,000 outlets, lots of people would be using these tools, and they were all used to manual processes, and therefore a huge cultural shift, technology shift as well, and we needed to manage that very carefully. So the three solutions we were looking for were an e-procurement tool, a data capture facility, and some workflow. The solution selection really revolved around those three areas. So having got the business case signed off and the executive mandate, we then embarked upon a procurement tender process, certainly for the e-procurement tool and most definitely for the invoice workflow selection, so items 1 and 3 on your screens. Options included existing system capability. Remember I said we had 12 sets of ledgers, one of which was Oracle in our bank, a ledger system in some of our group businesses called Cedar, and there were equally external options which included SAP. Our selection at the time was very much governed by the fact that this was a decision that was not designed to change the face of any ERP system that we had. It was to deal with our purchase-to-pay processes only. And within Cedar, we had an enterprise-wide license agreement in place and a module part of that, which was an e-procurement tool. And it made good financial sense as well as operational sense to choose that as our selection, but it wasn't without going through a robust procurement tender process. Clearly the financials, having already got it with no additional cost, really did help that cause. As far as the data capture selection is concerned, the cooperative group had a long, and still has a long-term successful relationship with a business called Swiss Post Services. That business was recently awarded, certainly around the middle of 2012, there was a hot tender going on for the cooperative's electronic mail, and they were successful with that. And with that in mind, it made great sense to extend the relationship and leverage that additional purchasing power we had with them by awarding them the electronic mail contract, by actually saying, here's 600,000 goods and services not for resale invoices, we want to flow through your data capture as well. And in the process, we achieved a very good commercial arrangement with them. The invoice workflow selection, that did include looking at options in a fairly robust procurement tender process, again with Oracle, Cedar, Basware, and one or two other smaller external vendors. Basware was selected, they came highly recommended. We sourced references from a number of different areas, as well as saw their products as part of the selection process, as well as other competitors. Their reputation preceded them in many respects, but the process we went through ultimately awarded them the contract for all the right reasons. So the e-procurement and the workflow selection followed robust procurement tender process, and the data capture selection was a bit of a no-brainer for us because of our already growing relationship with Swiss Post Services. The structure and governance of the project, this is how we planned it. The Finance Systems and Change Steering Group is really the voice of our finance executive. So this is what faced into our Chief Financial Officer, who was the sponsor of this project. This is a finance project, so it was right to face into that individual. A steering group with some program partners, particularly around the e-procurement and the workflow tool. So e-scanning is just the name we gave to it, but the workflow tool with Basware. And the working groups, we designed the working groups into 5 discrete areas. We were very keen to make sure that stakeholder experience was a fundamental part of our engagement in the early stages, as well as throughout the project. And that's worked to our benefit as we've gone through the implementation of this project, in terms of making sure we keep close to people, taking good feedback, some critical feedback as well, and trying to respond to all of that positively. Controls and processes are the key. We want to make sure that we are in control of our processing and that what we introduce does not degrade the controls we have. It actually adds value and benefit to that. The project had a cost to it, it had benefits to it, predominantly headcount benefits, and we needed a small team to make sure that those benefits were being realised. The MI in reporting really is a big step change for us, because from manual processes, gathering MI and reporting was very, very cumbersome. We wanted to make sure that we got some slick outputs from this project that allowed us to drive compliance in a very positive way, and that's what this work stream looked at. And then the comms is really all about how we handle training, the communications and launch and implementations, as well as having a small team of people in the few weeks post-implementations that could take calls via a help desk. So that's the structure and governance. Key operational considerations revolved around people, process and systems. I've mentioned cultural change before. This was massive, thousands of users across many locations. We needed to engage with them up front to make sure that we were listening, as well as advising them of what changes were coming down the line and what that meant for them. We needed to plan training and determine how we were going to deliver that across multiple locations, and that involved face-to-face communications, helpline, video conferences, and computer-based training packages as well that we built. We wanted to have champions in business and functional areas that colleagues could turn to, rather than constantly coming back to the finance shared services team. And we wanted to make sure that we were checking the temperature of how people were feeling with what had been implemented and introduced, so that we could feed back to them with any appropriate changes or retraining that was required. Communication and MI is all around compliance, as previously mentioned, and one important thing in all of this lot, which is why we sought the executive mandate right at the beginning, was that there needed to be visible and understandable consequences for non-compliance, an escalation process that allows us to drive improvement and not get stuck because the support of a senior manager was not forthcoming. From a process and systems point of view, we wanted this to be as simple as possible. As mentioned on a few occasions now, get regular feedback from colleagues, and to be able to take that feedback to enhance and improve things on an ongoing basis. There were probably 4 key areas where problems were encountered. The cultural piece was by far the biggest, and to some extent still exists in small pockets today, but we've really jumped over some hurdles to deliver what we've delivered. Some of the key challenges were around, why are we changing? Because it was easy for people to pick up the phone and speak to the friendly supplier and order stuff, rather than actually raise an order on a system, which ultimately gives visibility and control and proper delegated approvals for those orders. And the behaviours of individuals in and around that change were, let's just say, from one end of the spectrum to the other. And it was really about actually telling the story of why we're introducing this. This is about controlling billions of pounds worth of expenditure, so that we can make sure we're only spending things with the right suppliers at the right price at the right time, and that we're in more control of those particular billions of pounds that we are spending. The perceived user-friendliness of the system goes hand in hand with that cultural change, because some people will think it's easy to pick up the phone and place an order rather than having to tap things into a system. And that's because sometimes people think of the task-based activity. It's harder to type something than it is to say something for some individuals, and they think about that rather than the end-to-end controls that we're actually bringing in. And of course, across a number of thousand areas and people, the colleague skills were very different across those individuals and locations. So making the process and system as simple as possible was very important. Compliance with cultural change, people not following process because they didn't think it was user-friendly. It was very important that we got some simple, effective management information that was delivered to appropriate people to drive compliance in the right direction with positive actions and a positive tone, and where appropriate, employing the consequences of not completing those actions via an escalation process. And the fourth area, our diverse business model. You saw in one of the earlier slides the different businesses we have. Stakeholder management was very important. Every business has a unique requirement. Some of them are big, some of them are small. Our job was to manage the implementation in such a way that we dealt with everything that we could get done across businesses in a one-size-fits-all, and that, using sort of just basic Pareto expressions, dealt with circa 80%, if not more. And the remaining 20% we took note of, took away, and we have delivered some of those, with some to deliver in 2014. So that really now takes me to the outcome and the story of where we're up to date. So the results of this project, with an executive mandate, and by the way, sometimes the executive don't follow the process and they fall foul of the consequences and escalation process that they themselves agreed to. Significant rollout of our e-procurement tool has taken place, and I'll put some measurement around this in the next couple of slides. We have an updated data capture facility for all our goods for resale, but we've also introduced it for our goods not for resale. We've got a workflow process that, instead of paper invoices going around the UK several times with lots of chasing, it's electronic, email-based and system-based, traceability. Nobody can hide behind a paper invoice that's on the desk anymore. It's an invoice that's on an email, and we know it's got to the person who needs to approve it. I won't talk about cultural change anymore. Been some significant improvements there. We have improved our spend control and RMI, and we have a much closer relationship on goods not for resale with our procurement team, because they've been our partners in this implementation. Our supply reduction has been very successful and is ongoing, and we have achieved some significant efficiency improvements in both time and cost, as well as the key performance indicators that we benchmark at the beginning and are achieving now. Our colleagues, rather than being pigeonholed into certain processing areas, are now much more flexible and cross-skilled, and we do have clear service level agreements with our customers now, our internal businesses, and very good relationships with them. There are 10 benefits that are listed. These are the ones that came to mind, so I just want to step through these. We do now have a very robust purchase-to-pay process and engagement at all levels within the business. That is a major benefit. That has been brought about by rationalising the number of ledgers that we had from the 12 I mentioned before down to what is essentially 2 now, one for bank and one for our trading group businesses. Our supplier-based control, we started off 2 years ago with 20,000 suppliers. We're down to 8, and it's still falling. It's a huge reduction, and that does allow us to leverage purchasing power with preferred suppliers, and that's been done by stopping maverick spend, people just wanting to use suppliers for the sake of using them rather than actually understanding what commercially is better for the business in leveraging spend. PO-based goods not for resale activity from a zero base is now at around 65%, and that's been a journey, that's been tough. The 35% we haven't achieved is partly because we haven't gone into all areas yet, and 2014 will deliver further rollouts in that area, as well as improve that 65% much further during the course of this year. We do have an invoice approval workflow. It really is quite a nice, tidy system, and I applaud Basware and their package for helping us with that. It gives us visibility in an audit trail of all invoices. There is a reduced life cycle in terms of supplier issuing through to them getting payment, and that is something we have to manage by making sure people are compliant to their SLAs in approving invoices within the certain number of days that has been agreed. Payment terms to suppliers, our payment to terms for those suppliers is improving, and our supplier relationship management becomes much better as a result of that. There is an increased level of desire to work much more closely together. We have reduced costs by 20% in our AP function since 2012. That's predominantly headcount based, but some operational or transactional costs as well were achieved in our negotiations with Swiss Post because of the additional volumes of business being pushed their way. The average cost of an invoice for us is 40p. That reduced by 20%, and our project costs were repaid in less than 2 years, and most of the benefits that we originally highlighted were fully realised. Some surpassed what we actually set ourselves as being the benchmark for those benefits. We do have clear SLAs. We work in a business where our business customers used to say, do you know what, we'll tell you when we're not happy, and that isn't good enough, because actually it's a two-way SLA that exists. They've got to do things for us to be able to do things for them, and that's what we've got now. We have regular service meetings, and there is a recognition from the businesses that they need to engage with us as their business strategy evolves, and our structures, processes and systems need to evolve with them. We have improved KPIs as a result of that, and a productivity of 66,000 invoices per annum per individual. In any sizable project, there are clearly some lessons, things that you learn as you go. You cannot crystal ball gaze and guess everything that's going to happen. And there's just a few on this particular screen now. The scale of this project was massive, and I think we felt it was massive at the beginning, but it felt a lot bigger than what we might have perhaps predicted. And some of the things I would change if I could get in my time machine and go backwards is the internal support that we provided my team with to manage this project. I would have put more resource into that, and I'll certainly take that learning into the future as we continue on this journey. And if other such projects of similar size, I'll make sure the right resources are in there. The size of the cultural change is really all about all those locations and thousands of users. But I'm happy to say that we've got very good engagement now, and the noise we got from the beginning is just a whisper right now. And we do have diverse business models and requirements, and it is about operating with our businesses to make sure that we don't lose sight of the 80% we can actually achieve fairly quickly for the sake of pausing and getting wrapped up in red tape about the 20% that might be specific requirements for individual businesses. In the future, we want to build on these achievements, learn from the lessons, and embed those learnings in any future projects, as well as making sure that what we've got right now, as successful as we believe that is, we embed that and continue to enhance our performance over the next year or two. That brings me to my summary slide. You know, this was a major change project for the cooperative, and we have got tangible improvements in controls, some really great efficiency improvements and visibility of the overall process. It's been good for the cooperative, it's been good for the people and colleagues within the cooperative, but equally it's been good for our suppliers as well, and they've been on this journey with us. And ultimately, we're in a place right now where we want to build on the success we have to date in 2014 and make sure that we continue to develop and improve our overall purchase-to-pay process for the benefit of our businesses and our suppliers. And at that point, I'd like to hand back to Susie for questions, please.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Adam, and thank you to Karen as well for your opening introduction. Many questions coming through, so if you haven't already posted me your question, please do so. And just as we wait for you to have a chance to post me your question, let's just launch the final poll question for the day. So coming up on your screen now, please. Where are you in deciding on implementing a solution for your manual invoices and how to handle your manual invoices? Are you planning on implementing in the next 24 months? Planning on implementing in the next 12 months? Currently building your requirement set or your RFP? Are you in a situation where you've actually selected a solution and you're actually in the throes of implementation? Or is it not applicable to you right now, or you don't know? If you could respond to that, please, it would just be good for us to understand the kind of the maturity, if you will, in your thinking around deploying a solution similar to the one that the cooperative did and has been doing for the past while. So we're only at 57% of you voting, so if you haven't already responded, please do so. Just before we move into questions, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. So let's have a look at the responses there. So what we've got here is quite interesting. 13% of you say it's not applicable or you don't know. Just shy of 50% of you have actually already selected a solution and you're in the throes of implementation. So best of luck for you. Hopefully you've garnered an awful lot from Adam's presentation and experience, and the remainder of you are planning to do so in the next 24 months or are currently building your RFP. Right, let's move through to questions. Let's take them pretty much in order. First one for you, please, Adam. This is actually about your EDI experience. A question from a viewer: how do you decide which suppliers how do you decide which suppliers to set EDI up with? Obviously, it can be a significant effort to set up an EDI link with a supplier. So is there value in doing EDI for lesser used suppliers?
Okay. Firstly, our EDI is limited to our goods for resale suppliers, but that is 7 of the 8 million invoices. We've got a couple of solutions on EDI. One is the full TraderCon solution, and our prioritisation there is really based on volume of invoices. So we'll pick the bigger volumes first of all and then get engaged with the suppliers and our commercial teams, because it's all about making sure product range and price is set up correctly and agreed at both supplier and co-op end. But if it's a small supplier, we have a web-based portal that suppliers literally key their invoices into, and that then creates at our end a pseudo EDI file that then goes through our internal system. So we can accommodate both, but in reality we will prioritise the bigger volume suppliers first.
Okay, good, thank you. And another viewer is wondering what specific steps the cooperative took for improved compliance. That's to you, please, Adam.
Okay, compliance really is about understanding the process, communicating the process, and then being able to report against how people are delivering against that process. In P2P there are 2 real areas. One is supplier compliance and one is process compliance. So supplier compliance is, are people using preferred suppliers or are they trying to circumvent that? And as we reduced our supplier base from 20,000 to 8,000, there was more opportunity for people to circumvent it because there were more suppliers set up that perhaps weren't on our preferred supplier list, albeit still set up. Process compliance is about the simple things. Raise a requisition, convert it to an order, get it approved, receipt it, and then we can match an invoice against it. And I'm sure lots of viewers are in the position where they get an invoice that quotes a PO, but nobody's been in and receipted it. So we report on those activities to try and drive compliance in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. To you as well, Adam, has the company decided that any invoice received that matches with a purchase order is a genuine invoice? I think what the viewer is asking here is about matching, or do you use three-way matching only? So that's the first part of the question. Second part of the question is, how do you minimize invoice discrepancies?
Three-way matching, yes. That's certainly applied across our Goods for Resale and our current PO-based activity for goods not for resale. What was the second part of the question, please, Susie?
How do you minimise invoice discrepancies? Your exceptions,
okay.
I suppose.
We'll try and introduce some tolerances which allow very small variances to go through unopposed, but they are very small. We'll equally, if we get in a trend of activity with a certain supplier, then we'll make sure we engage with them and with the appropriate business to help lift that supplier's compliance on their invoicing back to where it should be. So it really is a joint effort across our businesses, ourselves and our suppliers.
Okay. Adam, why did you choose Manchester as the home for your financial services centre? Part one of the question. Part two of the question is, have you been inspired to accommodate other functions into your centre other than finance?
Okay, two very good questions. The Manchester decision really revolved around the fact that our current 240, around 180 of them already existed in Manchester, and whilst there might be cheaper property solutions, the risk of moving somewhere else outside of Manchester, which would involve risk losing lots of experienced staff, was far too great a risk to take. Forgive me. Second part of the question was what, Susie? Apologies.
No, not at all. About other functions like HR and procurement, whether you're bringing those in.
From a finance perspective first, bread and butter processing is what we do. From a personal perspective, there are other common, repeatable processes that go on in our business finance functions that I fundamentally believe should be brought into the Finance Shared Services Centre. From a wider perspective, you know, this business does have HR shared services, IT shared services, facilities management shared services, to name just a few. And I know that the business is looking at what particular organisational design it might want to move to in the future, but no decisions have been made yet. Okay,
that's great. Thank you for that response. Really, I think just time for two more questions. Were there any specific tactics that kind of pop out as critical success factors in getting this right?
I believe that the most critical one is communication, upfront communication, make sure there's no surprises, get the businesses, particularly the finance leads within the businesses, to be fully supportive and behind what it is we were introducing, so that the message had already landed on people's desks about what we were doing, why we were doing it, before we actually got in touch with them. That's the key one.
That's the key one, and something to get right up front of the project. How did the solution that you implemented influence, change, or connect with your payment solution?
It connects because anything that flows through the Basware workflow that reaches its approved status interfaces straight into our AP ledger. So that's how it gets in there. Not sure whether that's answered the question or not.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that's probably as far as we can go right now, because otherwise we're in danger of running over time. So thank you very much to Adam and to Karen. And ladies and gentlemen, just before we close down the webinar, just to highlight to you, we've got a fantastic set of webinars coming up over the next few weeks. So please make sure that you put those in your diary. And also remember that we have 2 cracking events for February and for March, both run out of London. We have a summit, which is actually both are hugely popular events. If your business is looking to introduce global process ownership, but hasn't quite cracked the job description or what they should be doing or how they should liaise with IT, etc., make sure you get yourself a place at the summit that we've got in February. And of course, we've got our annual European Summit for Leaders in Shared Services taking place in March, which is a must for your calendar. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and we look forward to welcoming you next time. Goodbye.